Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK radio network.
This is Sasha Christie, and you're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the UK's biggest paranormal network. And this is Paranormal Dimensions with David Young.
Thank you for that, Sasha. What a great welcome. Right, got another great show here. Now, first of all, I think for my listeners that have been listening recently, I started doing like call-outs for people. I've got call-outs for Eva Bianco in Corpus Christi, Texas, Dave Kelly in Liverpool, UK, and Darren Cooper, Southampton, UK. Hope you've been listening, and welcome to the show, everybody else. Now, I've got a great guest again tonight. I'm a bit scared of this one because she's a witch and everything. But Solaris BlueRaven. Now, she's been on the golden path of mysticism for well over 20 years now. So I'm going to waste no more time. I'm going to introduce Solaris BlueRaven.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Oh no, it's welcome to the show, and I'm really pleased to be. I've heard of you. Well, for quite a long time now. You won't have heard of me, but
I actually am familiar with your name, and congratulations on your wonderful show, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. I mean, it seems to be, well, it's actually surprised me. I didn't think it was going to be as popular as it is, but seems to be going down okay anyway. But
wonderful.
But anyway, this is your show, and I want to find out all about you. I mean, like I said, I'm a bit scared of this one because you seem to be very. Oh, you're a black belt and everything, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm pretty much mastered a lot of different things, and yeah
you're amazing. I mean, your resume here is quite amazing.
Well, yeah, it's a couple lifetimes all merged into one, I suppose, when you think about it. But yeah, I have a background in martial arts and second degree black belt and witchcraft, mysticism, and a lot of other areas.
That's fantastic.
And plus Cobra technology, yeah.
Yeah, because you've got your own radio show as well, haven't you?
I do, yeah. It's on Hyperspace. It's over there at KCOR Digital Radio Network. And of course, it gets replayed here at Paranormal UK Radio. That's
right, yeah. And what I'll do, I've got a Facebook Paranormal Dimensions page. I'll actually put links up to it and all that, so people might guide a few more people over to your show. Yeah, it's good to share listeners around, isn't it?
Right. I'm sure my followers will be following you, so that's
well,
awesome.
I hope so. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
More the merrier.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know where you want to start to tell us maybe how you got started in the paranormal and everything, or I mean, I bet you've done this 100 times, so you're probably fed up with telling the story.
Oh, no, that's okay. Well, the path of spirit is something that I was just born into, in the illusion of, I guess, when I say the illusion of, because we enter onto a timeline, into a world, but we're already come in as advanced beings, in my opinion anyway, in my assessment. So when I entered onto this world, I always had the ability to see energy. I always had the ability on a spiritual consciousness level to know things ahead of time in the illusion. So I figured that at some point that was going to get stronger and stronger, and it did. Down the road, I just learned to develop my skills. I also came from a family that was very much involved in mysticism and spirituality, but yet had other belief systems connected to Christianity, connected to the high-ranking Scottish Rite Masons and Eastern Star. So the mystical aspects was always there in my atmosphere growing up and evolving. And from that point on, I just started just working with the energies, fine-tuning my psychic abilities, and just grew and evolved and started studying the craft. I started studying mysticism and received initiation down the road, and eventually that just morphed into something on a very high level of spirituality and consciousness, which I developed and fine-tuned over the years. And of course, I didn't even factor in the Cobra technology induction that happened in 2004. So a lot of things that happened to me in progressions and spirals over the decades, which pretty much created who I am today.
That's fascinating. Oh, you've written several books as well, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. I have several books.
With some amazing titles: Transmission Through Ascension, Soul of the Sun, Programmed by Deception, Eye of the I think that comes after another one, doesn't it? Eye of the Remote Black Operations. I mean, would you want to tell us something about those, or
the
really, I'd like you to just tell us whatever you want.
Sure.
There's so many things here that I mean, it seems like there's not anything that you don't sort of deal in.
Well, I mean, there's always place to grow and evolve and learn, but I have mastered quite a bit of information, so I like to share it. What I do know, I like to share with the masses.
Well, please
and Transmutation Through Ascension, Soul to Sun was initially put out in 2004, and that's a book which is pretty much a 101 insofar as ascension goes, DNA activation, and spirituality. I don't dovetail it into the New Age movement, because a lot of the New Age movement, in my opinion, has been watered down with the quote-unquote, their aspects of what they believe is ascension work. But for this, it's a very 101 insofar as supernatural energies, how one changes their own vibrational field and frequency due to their own state of consciousness, and how frequency affects your DNA, which allows you to grow and evolve spiritually. So a lot of different things I cover in that book in particular. It's a great book for a 101 insofar as just learning and growing and trying to understand what ascension is, what DNA activation is, and how we evolve to higher levels of consciousness, where we bring in what I call the avatar consciousness, which is an aspect of your higher self, oversoul superconscious, and very fine-tuned. So that book was published in 2004. And then from that point on, I put out the Eye of the Remote series, which connects to a lot of dark energies associated with covert warfare, psychotronic weapons, artificial telepathy, and a mimic program that's designed to weaponize the supernatural world. And the only reason I wrote that book was because I was pulled into the warfare program in 2004 and I decoded it, and then I wrote about it. So that's the reason I have the book out itself.
Wow.
That is a real hard read sometimes for some people who are very enlightened consciousness, because there's a lot in there that's not very positive. In a sense, it's more disturbing because there's a lot of weaponization. And the one way to get at, with these covert projects is to get into the head of people, to get into the mind so they can control, manipulate. And using signal interface is one of the ways they do that. So that's where that came from. Program by Deception is a sequel. And the Program by Deception talks about the timelines. It talks about the world and the global agenda that's going on with the technology itself. And then I put a documentary, Eye of the Remote Disclosure in Covert Technology, which deals with the implant analysis scan. And that's something that I actually had registered by Steve Colburn, who I saw in California when I went out there, and he measured the signals, and we confirmed a lot of information at that point.
Wow.
So that's where that is. And I have 1 million miles to minute. I forgot about that. But that's the most recent one. It's about artificial intelligence and the future of the world as a spin-off, because that is actually the technology I was interfaced with that I just wrote in a sci-fi to adapt into so people would understand a little bit better what's going on a bigger scale. I put it in science fiction format, but it's actually a real documentation of a real experience through the artificial intelligence array system.
Yeah, that seems to be a bit of a trend, doesn't it? Putting true facts into like a fictional form nowadays.
Yeah, it really is.
I suppose it kind of makes it maybe more readable for a certain audience, you know.
Right.
That maybe you read science fiction, but may not sort of read the real stuff, sort of thing.
Exactly. Well, there's conspiracy. You know, people like to look at the conspiracy aspect, and I think that word is just so. It just falls flat sometimes because people want to assume that that's just it's just theory. It's just something else, but it's not really real. And when in fact it's actually the technology I talk about. There are patents for this technology. This is a real program. Yeah, it's interesting how that plays out.
This your golden path to mysticism. So it's well over 20 years you've been doing this now.
Yeah, I've received a lot of different initiations, Enochian initiations, all different kinds of initiations insofar as spirituality goes and progressions of where I've been with teachers and spiritual teachers. And the golden path of spirit is really just about who we are as ascended beings, when our life body is truly fine-tuned and activated into our Merkaba, what I call the Merkaba, which is the vehicle of light, and how we walk the timelines here as a pillar of light and extend that energy into the cosmos, but also bring the energy from the cosmos here to change our world and those around us. So that's part of the golden path of higher consciousness and spirit, which really deals with, and it also connects into other aspects of initiation, sacred initiation and also healing modalities.
I know you mentioned something about 22-dimensional energies. I mean, that's something close to my heart. I think that there's so many different dimensions that we're dealing with. We probably don't know how many dimensions there are. I know you've mentioned 22.
Right. And I reference that a lot because it's a master frequency, and it's also connected to Atlantean timelines and initiation through Atlantean transmission and frequency. However, it is infinite. And when it comes down to dimensional fields and multidimensional access, we are infinite beings. You probably realize this, but we're multidimensional, existing simultaneously beyond the illusion of space and time. So we have so many aspects of us already out there in the cosmos, merged with creator sources, co-creators. We're soul extensions of that. We have extensions of ourselves everywhere in the cosmos. And in my opinion, that's what creates the antenna where we can bring in information and transmit and receive and get what we call downloads and things like that.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're an elder of the initiate of orders of, I can't read the word, Melchizedek.
Melchizedek, yeah. And that is, I received initiation way back, years and years back in the 90s, before it was real popular, I guess, but that is something that I still do, and I still do initiations as guided. I haven't done any recently, but yeah, it is a very sacred system, and in my opinion, very, very empowering because of the energetic signatures you're working with on a multidimensional scale. It's a very, very powerful transmission.
Yeah, I have to be honest, I've not actually heard of that, but
yeah, there's different orders. I mean, there's different Melchizedek orders. The Melchizedek is in my opinion, this is where it comes from, where the cosmic design, and I kind of negate some of the information that's going here on the linear world, and I bring in more of the celestials, but celestial teachers. In other words, they intersect other dimensional fields and other multidimensional realms, and initiate through the inner planes to some degree, but there's that frequency band of teachers, celestial teachers, that navigate from star system to star system, and part of that is our celestial heritage, which we inherit as we go through progressions, and the initiation is part of that Melchizedek, where they're the teachers, and they literally journey from place to place. You incarnate as a Melchizedek sometimes.
That's a practice saying that. Melchizedek, is that almost right? Right.
It's perfect.
And you teach many ancient systems such as Reiki. I mean, I've actually experienced Reiki. It's actually,
that's great.
Yeah, it's actually quite invigorating, isn't it? I don't know if that's the correct word for it, but
that's great. Yeah,
you do feel uplifted after it. Yeah,
it really is. And I love the Yasui system. That's one of the traditional systems you're working with. But yeah, it definitely has so many capabilities insofar as healing and resetting the body. And removing anything that's holding the energy and limitation on a subtle scale. So that's a very powerful healing system if anybody's trying to get involved in healing work or wants to pursue a modality for healing. I think Reiki is one of the best ways to go.
And where does the Egyptian cartouche come into it? Or the
Egyptian cartouche is my system. It's my celestial system, which connects into a soul ascension I received, which is information based on my recorder cells and my celestial heritage and cellular memory, which I created. So it's a formula activated through my initiations that comes in.
Oh, I see. Right. Well, I think I see. and the Daughters of Isis, is that...
That's part of mine, too. It's basically the celestial... my Blue Star Fortress is my celestial group. And the Blue Star, the celestial energies of my initiations over the years, is also an aspect of me through the soul ascension, soul extensions. But when I received my initiations, the information that I received was my specific information to utilize, and that's what I work with. So it's my system.
I see.
It's a signature system.
Yeah. I think I get it. Because, like you said, it's like Atlantean.
Right.
And the etheric surgery, I presume that means you're actually working. That means working with spirit, doesn't it, to heal? You're working
in the etheric field, yeah. The etheric light master surgery. Anytime you're working in the etheric body, you're working on more like the holographic grid, but you're working in the subtle energy field and the etheric, so that you're able to remove anything like etheric implants. They tend to dissolve through frequency, for example, but when you're working in the etheric field, that is definitely, you, as a surgeon, as a psychic surgeon, and I'm not talking the ones that go in there and, you see in other, I don't know, Mexico or something, but I'm talking about etheric energy, where you're going in, you're removing things, blockages of any kind, and that has a lot to do with this type of surgery. When you have initiation into any healing system as a master teacher, normally you will have what we call the lasers that come out, where you can actually remove this and on an etheric level, almost do a holographic repatterning onto the person who's in need of healing. So it's very powerful work.
Have you got any specific cases that you can talk about for that, or?
Oh gosh, I have, in the past I've had all kinds of things. I've worked on a lot of different people. I always mention the one case that always was most fascinating was a gentleman who had AIDS, and he was in really bad shape, and I did some work on him, and within a month he came back to me and said that he was in remission, which I thought was fabulous. So that was one positive thing. We had, another time I was doing a group session where we were doing healing circles, and we had 4 master teacher healers working on one person who had cancer, who was planning on going to Mexico, by the way, to get healed, or get some kind of surgery and therapy. And we pushed so hard and worked so much energy on this particular person that went into remission as well. So I believe in beyond miracles. I believe that when we change the dynamic in the DNA, when we heal the patterning or whatever the trauma is, we can actually go in there and actually redesign it and holographically repair to such a degree that people can be healed on a lot of different levels. When people receive initiations, they get beautiful visuals, and I don't think that's their delusions. I believe that they're actually seeing energy and experiencing, especially those who are empathic or attuned to higher frequencies. And I've had people see all kinds of wonderful things when I've done initiations in the past as well. So it's for real. The systems are for real. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a bit mind-blowing, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is.
Well, the Palladian and Arcturian ascension timelines, that all comes into your system, is it?
Right,
Would
it comes into this. I would call it it's more of a cosmic compass and a celestial heritage. So it is part of an aspect of what we call soul extensions of me. So the Arcturian healing system is a connection to my own healing modalities and what I've been initiated to for healing work. So that's there, and that's also a celestial healing system. And the Pleiadian celestial healing system is something I incorporated along the timelines. I know it sounds really abstract out there, but when you start fine-tuning and ascending into your divinity, you start getting through these dimensional fields and multidimensional states of consciousness where you're understanding the language. And a lot of it is a geometric light language. And it's more than downloading. I mean, you're just literally streaming the energy through higher consciousness, pure energy, pure light, which has really interesting because that was one of the reasons, in my opinion, I was put on the radar with the covert warfare program later on down the road.
Wow, yeah. So the covert war, can you tell us anything about this covert warfare? It kind of fascinates me to just hear the words.
It's interesting because that's a technological interface. What they do, and I'll describe it as best I can for everyone, but they've heard it before probably if you read my books, but they'll triangulate a target inside. Well, for example, they targeted me inside my residence in Colorado. So they triangulated me in my home with a satellite-driven technology. What they use is a signal interface. So they'll use a signal interface onto the target of interest, which would have been me, and neurally interface me onto their artificial intelligence array system, which deals with live feed communication system with a live agent, also deals with synthetic telepathy, live feed, real time. So you're dealing with a communication system that's encrypted, that is very black in the science departments, but also used in other areas in advanced sciences and what I call the black sciences, black space program, whatever you want to call it. So there's a lot of that going on. That's the technology I was interfaced with in 2004 that changed my life forever. And that's the technology I started writing about because what they were using it for, besides sci-spy, you can use it for sci-spy, you can use it for remote viewing, you can do a lot of good things with it. However, it's more, with them, it was more for interrogation and harassment and then interfacing and creating all these different types of programs that are not necessarily in the highest good for the individual, and also data mining. So they're taking information and then trying to dump information. And you've heard of MK Ultra, I'm sure. It's kind of like an advanced version to some degree of something that could easily mimic an MK Ultra, because what they're trying to do is tamper with your brainwave activity or mimic it. So it is an interesting technology, and it's out there. And I'm sure you've probably heard. Yeah, it is. And the thing is, it's the wave of the future, because you're talking, the level to it right now is more transhumanism. So right now they're using the transhumanism program to adapt us onto machines. In other words, we're compatible with machines. We know that because we can stream energy. We bring in consciousness all the time. There's no distance in the illusion of space and time. So we're always transmitting and receiving data. All they do is literally interconnect us onto a technological signal and bring that signal back into the communication system. And we're right there engaged with the technology.
Now, when you say they, you are talking about the governments. Are you? Right.
In my particular circumstance, it was a high-profile band that inducted me into the covert warfare program because they had access to the technology and they were using it with their own touring and on their own surveillance and security systems. Which, of course, if you read my books and you watch the documents, here I have my handler who I testified against in 2006, and he had access and was deploying this technology. He's also connected to DC and other covert areas which are linked to alphabet agencies. So it's one big tentacle that just expands everywhere when it comes down to the technology itself.
Yeah, because that interests me quite a bit. The secret space program, I don't know how much you know about it, but
I know the technology real well. I know the technology can pretty much create anything. And a lot of people who say they've been through different various programs, for me it's like Total Recall. I don't know if you ever saw that movie, but it's really about just interfacing a target onto something where they're showing them forced visuals, but the visuals may not be actually the right imagery. It could be a psychotronic program where it's creating a more of a delusion for them, but yet they'll believe that they were in these areas. And that's what we have to look at insofar as mind control and psychotronic weapons go. That's part of that. So I do look at it like that, but I do see that this is an unlimited technology and it can be used for astronaut space travel. It's phenomenal because you can do so much with it with remote viewing. It's very good, but what I see is that they want to make sure they're handling it, controlling it, and making sure that they don't give it to anyone or anybody unless they can completely control that person.
Do you think they got it from like reverse engineering from maybe the Roswell crash or anything like that? Or
I think a lot of it's reverse engineered, to be honest, but I also feel like they've been data mining a lot of what I call star people. I see us as star beings. And even though we're not fully activated insofar as our abilities go, those of us who have a lot of ability and have access to higher dimensional fields of information get looked at. And at the same time, when we get looked at, they start creating this type of a surveilling program where they can literally extract us into these programs, even on a subliminal scale. So that does go on.
Makes you think about abductions as well then, doesn't it? Like alien
exactly.
abductions.
Yeah. And I'd like to say that, from my own experience and research, it seems to me that a great majority of people who are being abducted are actually not being abducted by extraterrestrials, but more the covert departments that are literally wearing a mask of an extraterrestrial to confuse the person they're inducting.
Yeah, it's quite a frightening.
Well, it can be. It's interesting. There's so many nefarious programs, and it's funny because when we first started off in the interview, you were talking about a lot of things that I was doing prior to my induction. And if you could see, it sounds really out there, a lot of the stuff that I was doing, but it was so pure light, pure energy, and so powerful that, in my opinion, I believe that put me on the radar to be interfaced with their technology, because that is more of a machine world, which makes my technology and me, what I have, my abilities, accentuates those abilities to some degree, and put me in a different arena where they could experiment on what I was capable of doing with my mind.
So when do you think you were targeted? Probably 20 odd years ago?
Well, in 2004 is when I was pulled into the covert warfare program. But prior to that, I would say I was always being looked at. I really do. I started doing a check down timelines back in the 80s, and I started feeling like I was having experiences that were more astral oriented, out of body, and just very strange. And I just kind of brushed it off. I didn't really think anything about it. But now that I look back at those things, I'm thinking that perhaps I was being looked at back then and I didn't realize it.
Yeah. Those out-of-body experiences fascinate me too. Can you control out-of-body experiences yourself? Yeah?
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of astral projection. In the younger years, I used to travel all the time. And when I noticed that after I was pulled into the technological program, there was more of shadowing going on, which means I always had something following me, which normally that was never there before. If I did have something with me when I was astral projecting back in, say, the 80s or the 90s, it was more of a spirit or friendly, love-based, celestial being. And these were more shadowy. They were more like MIB types. So I did notice the change. But as far as astral projection goes, anybody can do it. It's a matter of practice, of raising your vibration, but also setting the intent and controlling yourself, especially when you're dreaming. So when you're in a lucid space of consciousness, when you know you're in a dream, you can create that dream. You can actually change the painting. You can change the scenery. I'm sure you're probably familiar with this, but literally change the whole design work. But also say, okay, I want to travel tonight, or I want to go somewhere. But I've always said, make sure that you set your perimeters and shield and protect, because there are things out there that are not necessarily in the highest good for your evolution in your own, four-body system and astral body.
Yeah, in my younger years, I did that, play around with that. Well, not play around with it, but experiment it. So I can actually see where you're coming from there. I don't actually do it now, but the experience that I've heard a lot about is it's actually fascinating.
It's very liberating to me.
Do you think that a lot of it could be also connected to reincarnation, like going to past lives and revisiting?
I think there's definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that a lot of the times we get pulled out of our bodies, or whether we do it intentionally or through spirit, that we're there to witness something sometimes. And that could be something to do with another lifetime. And also we exist simultaneously. So the past and the present, the future are all now. If you're having any issues from, say, you have traumatic, some kind of a trauma from another lifetime, then it will surface now on the timeline, and you'll have to deal with that and go through it at the cellular core level. And that has to do with, say somebody all of a sudden has an imagery of something and it's haunting them. It's a repetitive looping kind of a program. That needs to be looked at and cleared. So those are things, in my opinion, anyway. So that's something that I look at as well, because I feel like we're witnessing as a sacred witness multiple lifetimes right before our eyes.
That's a fascinating concept. Yeah, got lots to get my head around here tonight. You'll be keeping me awake all night tonight. So, I don't know where to go with now. What about, so, are you actually interested in UFOs as well, or does this kind of be, you're more interested in the etheric side of things?
Actually, I believe we are the UFOs. So if you look at where I've been with research and technology, I believe that we are the star beings and that we are capable of actually traveling through our own, what we call stargates, through our own chakra system and our own celestial design work when we raise our vibration and actually change our biomolecular field to a point where we're actually able to phase shift into other dimensional fields. And that sounds really advanced, but it's really who we are as star people because we are the visitors. We're extensions of them, in my opinion. Yeah. So when I look at the UFO community and I look at UFOs, I see us as the extension and the lineage to that. It's nothing strange. It shouldn't be anything strange to us. I think most of the time these days when I look at UFO anomalies, because of where I've been with technology, I'm able to decode it a lot easier and say, well, this is man-made. This is part of the Black Science Department versus something that's really an off-world or interdimensional being or life form.
So when someone sees a UFO who's never seen one before, so what does that actually mean? Are they actually seeing it unconsciously or what? I don't quite...
In my opinion, I think when people are seeing UFOs, it's usually because their frequency is altered to the level of consciousness that they're able to adapt onto another dimensional field and see something there that's actually in vibrational frequency. It's in resonance with theirs. That's just my own take. When we raise our states of consciousness, we open doors. We open states of multidimensional space. And that's what I mean by being your own Stargate. So you're opening up the energy. As you raise your vibrational frequency, your whole world changes around you. Even though you're holding the ground here, you're grounded here, you can still see a multidimensional space. And in my opinion, maybe that's what's going on with some of these people who are witnessing this type of a frequency, which is literally activating them and experiencing these things. But one thing I will tell you is that some of these technological worlds that are here in the Black Sciences are able to piggyback off of those frequencies and create a psychotronic program where they can create false visuals. And that's why I say be very careful. Log your information, use discernment, but also follow your instincts, follow your gut, follow your intuition, because you know it's spirit-wise that what's real and what's not. In other words, you know that something is off-world versus something that's manufactured by mankind.
Yeah. Well, how do you stand as far as when you hear about reptilians, and do you consider there such things, or?
You know, it's funny. I've never seen one. I've never experienced. I have a lot of friends and people that I know that say they have. I would say, in my opinion, this is once again my opinion and assessment, I feel like it's more psychotronically oriented to a point where it's created as a screen memory to distract them from what's really going on. So when people say they've had all these extraterrestrials, perhaps maybe grays or anything like that, I would say it's possible that they've been interconnected with the technology that's creating a visual like that that's created a screen for them to distract them from what's really happening and what they actually went through.
Right.
I think it's just one level. I think it's one layer. It's like you have to peel it off.
Yeah. You don't consider it could be like in sometimes it could be misconstrued as a demon, or a reptilian, whichever way your sort of mind works, I presume.
Exactly. It's given to you according to your beliefs, and that's another thing. If you have fear, or if you, if you automatically assume everything is evil, then when you experience something, you're going to assume that that's a bad thing versus a positive. Or, yeah, I agree. It can shapeshift into whatever you want it to be to some degree. And that goes into the holographic world. That goes into what we are dealing with here as a hologram. We project, we manifest the reality through thought. So we have to be very clear on what we want to manifest. That's part of alchemy. That's part of mysticism. That's part of witchcraft. You create and manifest according to your belief systems, but at the same time, you have to take responsibility for what you're manifesting. So something for people to pay attention to.
Now you mentioned witchcraft. Now you are a witch, are you not?
Yes, yes, I am. Yeah, I classify myself, as a witch. A lot of other things, high priestess, whatever you want to call it. I know people have a lot of misperceptions of witchcraft and witches. And if you're a mystical scientist and you've been on the path, there's the solitaire witch, which is who you are as a multidimensional being. And to me, it's just a magical person. I mean, you can go into the dynamics of, are you, what lineage is this? And like the Gardnerian this and that. But honestly, when push comes to shove, we are all magical beings. And in my opinion, it's just about how you work the energy. But to be honest with you, I've always been that. It's never been something that I've had to be initiated into. And you'll hear from a lot of people, it takes a witch to make a witch. Well, not with me.
Yeah.
That never happened. So I didn't have to have that.
So you're actually born a witch. You don't become a witch.
In my opinion, you do. I mean, some witches will argue that, but I don't. I've met too many witches that are solitaires over the years that would say now that it's something in their blood, it's something in their DNA, it's something in their celestial heritage. And yes, if they find the right, group of people to work around and initiate with, that's fabulous. But always, we are all spiritual beings, and however we progress and whatever we do on the timeline, wherever that goes, it's going to be on a mystical level. Yeah. So you'll see more and more of the people, witchcraft has gotten a really bad name, and I try to redefine that for people so that they understand that it's not negative and that it's actually a very positive thing and a path of the wise one.
Well, I presume that you've got the black witchcraft and the white witchcraft. I presume you're more of the white witchcraft.
Yeah, I mean, the neutral positive is where I like to be. I believe in the defense of the dark arts, but I don't attack anybody. I've never been one to go after others. However, I know that there are a lot of not so nice people out there, witches and this and that do those things. What we have to do is fortify ourselves psychically and be able to deflect attacks. And I think that's something that everybody should master, especially if you're in the the paranormal, the supernatural, and you're going into hauntings and you're going into places where you're around a lot of regurgitated energies and imprints. You're going to have to understand that whatever created that more than likely had something to do, in my opinion, possibly with ritual. So be aware that, sometimes the residual effect can be something to do with something as simple as some bad mojo that was going on, in my opinion. So
yeah. Do you do many, for want of a better word, ghost hunts or investigations or?
I haven't recently, but I have in the past, and I really enjoy it when I do. I'm pretty tuned to energy, so I don't need any real devices. I am the device, so I can just go in there and kind of hone in on energies and signatures of places, and I have experienced interesting things. Some of the technology that I speak of with the synthetic telepathy can mimic the EVPs. So you have to be really careful if you're going in there and you're capturing EVPs all the time, because a lot of those radio waves could be hijacked. Right. So that's another thing that people need to pay attention to, that not everything is as it appears, and some of it can be a natural, yes, you're catching something in the ethers, spirit, but at the same time it can also be manufactured, especially today because everything is Wi-Fi and satellites.
Yeah, it sounds like 5G is going to be a bit scary, doesn't it, from what I've heard?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Apparently it's not going to be a good thing.
Right, no, I agree with that. There's been some strange going on with that, and I think it can scramble a lot of data and make some interesting special effects, let's put it that way. And also not necessarily as healthy as we want it to be for our own electromagnetic fields. And that's another thing. Our bodies are being calibrated to technology naturally because we're around it all the time. And that's something we have to factor in with our four-body system and our astral bodies, and understand that there's an aspect to us that is kind of a Sunday machine world to some degree, because we have to learn how to calibrate to the machines. And I do believe people have.
Yeah. When you've done your investigations, shall we say, like hauntings, have you had any really interesting cases, or any possession cases or anything like that?
Not possession per se. I am familiar with electronic possession because of the interface I've been with. Some of the things that I've been around are just kind of like just needing to clear houses or signatures that need to be moved on. Nothing really hardcore from where I've been in the past. When I look at it, I can't really say. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. And for me, I'm kind of calibrated to so many things that nothing phases me. Yeah. So what will probably be disturbing to some people won't be disturbing to me at all.
Yeah, I think I get that from you seem to be flame-proof.
Well, I'm not invincible. My body takes hits, but I have been through some interesting worlds, and those worlds have been very dark. And although I'm the light, I just, it's just like, it's strange. You go into these dark worlds, and then you understand, you become more empowered. You just have more armor. That's how I feel.
You sound a bit like Doctor Strange, actually.
Oh, great.
No, it's quite amazing. What about alchemy? Do you have much involvement with that, or have you been in the past?
Mystical alchemy, everything's frequency. So when I talk about mystical alchemy, I'm discussing how frequency changes everything around us, and that everything in our environment is based on a frequency and a sounding. So when we're talking about how to change our world, we do it through toning, sound, frequency, and altering the frequency of who we are, our molecular structure, in order to adapt to another dimensional field. So that's where mystical alchemy comes through, sacred initiation. You're working with frequencies that are literally designed to change your DNA and alter your state of consciousness. And this is something that correlates to ancient mystery schools as well. I touched on the transfiguration of the atom, which is really about who we are as when we morph into and from our light body into Merkaba, which is the vehicle of light, and that's through sacred initiation. And once again, it's alchemy. It's always about alchemy.
So do you consider there is really like secret governments that use all this secret ancient knowledge to control everything?
I think they hijacked it. Excuse me. I think that they've taken a lot of the information from secret societies, excuse me while I clear my throat, and actually have weaponized it to some degree, and also, in my opinion, watered it down and maybe misrepresented some of the initiation codes to the point where they're using it for more of control and manipulation and more nefarious versus what it's supposed to be, which is more the pillar of light and the beacon of light. When I look at it, I see it as the Lady of the Lake, or something that's very divine and pure. And to me, it seems like it's been weaponized. So I do see that has been going on, but it's also it doesn't really have a lot of power, in my opinion. No. It only can stay in one-dimensional field, and it cannot ascend.
I see. Right. Is there, Is there some sort of a primary factor that keeps you going in your mechanism, or is it just something natural that happens all the time to you? You know?
Regarding what?
Well, with your, I mean, can you actually turn it off, I suppose, is the question I'm trying to say to you. It's,
Well, my energy's always streaming. When I was younger and I was just running energy, I'm always running energy. And my martial arts always helps insofar as, anchoring your chi and being able to utilize the energy appropriately. When I was interconnected with technology in 2004, that calibrated me to a machine world and a digital world that was a little more technological. And that was a different type of adaptation. It's almost like the Borg energy. So that changed me a lot insofar as my transmissions and frequency and everything around me. And now, that was 2004. Nowadays, I'm more coming back. And now I just have a lot of different aspects of energy. But it's way different than it used to be. But yeah, I can switch off, me. Insofar as I really want to stop and just take some time out, that's one thing. But the digitized world, the technological world, the interface that I was subjected to was you could never rest. It's constant streaming of interface. You don't get any down at all.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
That's why I turned them in. I mean, this is why I wrote the book I Remote, because this was an abuse of information and technology and abuse of power onto someone for experimentation or whatever it was they were trying to do. I don't wish that on anybody because it can mimic what I call electronic possession is what it boils down to, because it makes the person look like they could appear schizophrenic, bipolar, or have possession, because you're literally interfacing with synthetic telepathy live in real time.
Yeah. Or can it turn people that way?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because I don't know if you're familiar with heterodyning or not, but there's an EEG cloning and heterodyning program that's covert, MK Ultra oriented, CIA, old intelligence communities, but literally a mixing of signals which overlays onto a healthy brainwave activity of a target, mixing of technology and signals to a point where it'll create a schism in the brain to make them look like there is something wrong with them when in fact there's not. Now, this is something that mirrors mental illness, and this is something that I've tried to address because, in my opinion, it can be very dangerous to misrepresent somebody or mislabel them when they're not mentally ill, they're not schizophrenic, they're not bipolar, but they're actually being affected and infected with a technological interface.
Certainly. Oh, wow. Oh, God.
Yeah, that's hardcore, by the way. That's something that needs to be, to me, it needs to be watched very closely, what they're doing and who's able to deploy that and why.
I mean, when you think about the disclosure movement, that probably means that there's never going to be a disclosure then, is there? It seems like they're just trying to basically turn us all into robots eventually.
Right. I think that we are the disclosure. I think you're the disclosure, I'm the disclosure, everybody you interview. I mean, to me, it's those of us who have personal experience and spiritual experiences that have put it out there in truth, are actually the real disclosure, because you're not going to hear it from these other agencies. And a lot of it is so classified beyond top secret, and it has so many levels to it that the only way you will hear about it is if somebody like me gets pulled into a program and starts talking about it and discloses the data. I don't think they'll ever disclose it because it works so well. But nowadays, you know what? The patents are out there, and if you look at DARPA, for example, you can find all the technology I talk about is something they're already there, full speed ahead with.
Yeah, I think I've actually spoken about this before. I think they've actually put a lot of information out, but it's actually, you've got to actually find it. It's like hiding a tree in the woods, isn't it? It's,
And just use your intuition, and it's not about being paranoid or anything, it's just about knowledge. I've always said just keeping tools in your toolbox and having a lot of information so that if you're doing investigations or whatever it is, you have all these different avenues to come from. You don't have to go from just one area, you can look from many areas. And that's what I've always said to anybody who's studying the path of spirit, mysticism, the supernatural, anything. Make sure that you understand every aspect of what it could be, because there's so many levels out there.
Yeah. I presume that would be your main advice for anyone conducting their own research or investigations, to actually do what you just said. Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for me knowing my state of consciousness and my abilities before I was inducted, I wouldn't have recognized synthetic telepathy. But because I had done the spiritual work and I already understood the language of the cosmos, when they hit me with the technology, I was laughing about it. I said, oh, this is man-made. I mean, it reeks of man-made technology, because it was so inferior to my own state of consciousness. That's how I knew. So this is just an example of where we come from.
Right.
Doing the spiritual work always helps along the way.
Yeah. I'm actually amazed at how you cope with everything. I mean, you seem to know everything about everything. Well, I know you don't.
No, well, I'm still learning, growing, and evolving. I have a good database. I have a solid database and benchmark my own personal experiences. But I'm always learning every day and growing. But I do know what I do know, I know very well. Yeah. So that part works well, but it's always progression.
Yeah. So, what do you think the most pressing challenges are being faced now for in the paranormal community? Do you think, I don't know, Is this something we've got to resist, or something we just need to be aware of?
I think it's something people need to be aware of, and also have a moral compass, a celestial compass. That's all. And for me, I don't wish people being inducted into any type of a technological interface where it's disturbing their peace of mind. And I will tell you that, for example, the stuff that I've been through will take away your prayer time, your peace of mind. You won't have any silence in the head anymore. It'll be interfaced with a technological stream. And to me, this is the wave of the future. It's transhumanism, but it's also what they're trying to do, in my opinion, for the future, where they can re-entrain everybody and have them all interfacing with synthetic telepathy and always with this groovy. I know that they've talked about this with, for example, I think Zuckerberg touched on it years ago. And it has its dark side. It has its side to when people get into your head. First of all, I don't believe they should be in there, interfacing with anything. I don't think they should be tampering with something so sacred as the temple, the sacred temple. Your body is a sacred temple, however you want to look at it. And when people are interfacing, they should have permission, first of all. It should be mutual. And secondly, it should be on a positive scale, not for something nefarious or mind control oriented or something that's going to create a distortion or a distraction or even insert a false program to lie and deceive the person that they're interfacing.
Going back to the Roswell, do you actually believe something happened with the Roswell crash?
I do. I'm not sure what, because I wasn't there in the illusion of, but I would say that there was definitely, in my opinion, exotic technology was there. I've heard stories about species. Obviously, there was some kind of a species involved. And I also get the sense, and I just have to look at that on an intuitive scale because I don't know much about that area, that there's definitely something that was reverse engineered when it comes to the DNA of the particular beings that they had encounters with. So that's what I look at.
Yeah. No, it's something I try to ask everyone that, because I try to get opinions, because my opinion is that something happened there, and I do believe that they did have some beings that they were experimenting on. Obviously, we'll know about the fake alien autopsy, but but then again, was there a real one as well? So that's another question.
Well, it also could have been a psyop with symbiotic intelligence. I mean, when we look and see prior to World War II, all the technologies that were coming out of with the Germans, with their technology with UFOs, and they did some phenomenal craft work. I mean, they were doing some interesting things. You're looking at different things going on in that timelines and different types of timelines that are happening here on and off. But I would say that there could be a correlation with some kind of maybe a psyop to some degree, but I still don't discount extraterrestrial intelligence. And to me, that's what they're really after, is the mind of the extraterrestrial, the cosmic mind, so they can replicate it, reverse engineer it, and use it for more like a symbiotic program to induct and also interface other people with their own, what I call electronic brain. I know it sounds really out there, but to me, that's what I think they're doing. I've talked to other people. I don't know if you've ever interviewed Dr. Richard Allen Miller, but it's very interesting. He's had some interesting experiences over near Area 51 back in the day, and he has a lot of memory loss, but he did meet some kind of a being, or so. That's what he's mentioned. I don't know if you want to interview him, but I can put you in touch with him. He's fascinating. Yeah, and he might be able to give you some information on that. But like I said, they called me Roswell 7 when I was inducted, and I never understood the nickname.
Oh, right.
So I think it has something to do with the technology and how black the sciences were. It was pretty hush-hush initially in 2004 when I was pulled into the program. And then later on, it just became more common, I think, later on. But initially in 2004, it was pretty quiet. The DC was signing off on what they were doing with me. So there was definitely very exotic, hush-hush programs going on.
Yeah, I'd love it if you point me in my direction. That'd be nice.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to.
Thank you.
Happy to.
What else have you got any more books you're working on at the moment, or?
Yeah, I do. Actually, it's a book that's on the alien intelligence, and you've heard it here first, and that will be out in about, I'm trying to get it wrapped up. It should be out in about a month or so, but I'll be sure to send you a copy if you're interested. And, it covers the space-time configuration. Yeah.
I'll certainly put it on the site as well, anyway. Because I'm not quite sure what date this goes out. I think it's about 3 weeks' time, because I've got sort of a bit of a backlog. But
I bet, yeah.
Well, I don't know, what's the next question? Oh, yeah, let's tell us a bit about your radio show, because you've got your own show, haven't you?
Yeah, I have 2 shows. Actually, I have one that's called Hyperspace. That's on KCOR Digital Radio Network. That's 12 midnight Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Pacific. And that's on Fridays. And people can tune in if they're interested. And I have Raven Star's Witching Hour, which is also on Saturday nights at 12 midnight Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Pacific. And that is on Revolution Radio, Studio A.
Right. Yep. I will put links to those on my page as well. And
well, thank you.
Probably steal a few pictures off of your page as well, if that's all right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, with the shows. I might even, if I can find some recordings, I'll put those up as well, because it's always nice to share this stuff around.
It is.
Right, let's have a little. What else could I ask you? Unless you can just volunteer some information while I'm looking for something.
Well, wherever you want to go, I'm fine with that. I can go into so many different worlds and realms.
I know.
What is your favorite area of interest?
Mine.
Let's talk about
mine is probably UFOs because I've had my own experiences, but I've had a little bit of a ghost experience as well. But my main interest, I presume, really is UFOs.
Nice. I'll have to have you on my show so you can discuss your UFO.
Well, sure, yeah, I don't mind.
I'd love that.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, I was going to talk about, I don't know if you want to talk about it now. I know.
Well, I can talk. I mean, I've mentioned it on a couple of other shows. I mean, anyone listening to my show, I apologise. I'll tell you again. When my main one was in 1967, I believe it was, and I was walking home from my girlfriend's house. Obviously in the UK here, in Essex, UK. It was late at night, or probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and I looked up in the sky, and there was a big orange oval object pulsating across the sky. And it was large, it was silent, and I wouldn't say it was like a bright light, but it was like an incandescent orange. And it seemed to be all different shades of orange. It wasn't just one shade of orange, you know. It's very difficult to explain it. But that was my main sighting. I was probably watching it for about 10 minutes.
That's beautiful.
But then I had an earlier experience when I was a child, actually. I was sitting on my steps. So I grew up in London. You might be able to tell from my accent, I don't know. But I was sitting on my steps probably when I was about 7 or 8 years old. This would have been the late 50s. And I was actually watching a star move and stop and move and stop. Now, as a kid, I just thought, oh, well, that's the star moving. You know, I didn't think about it anymore. It's only later on, of course, I realised that stars don't do that. So what that was back in the 50s, I don't know. So that's kind of my early experiences. I can't really put it down to anything else but a UFO. I mean, we know that stars don't move, so what the hell that was, I don't know.
And I would have said drone, but not around then. I mean, even if they had exotic technology, that's very interesting. And it's not the first time I've heard about the orange. I can't go into details, but my sister actually saw something like that in California one time. And to me, that's legitimate insofar as real UFO. I have to ask, if you felt like it was missing time, because once you see these things, in my opinion, you're always put on the path of spirit and multidimensional fields, and also perhaps even being picked up and may not even realize it.
I don't think I was. I mean, this was sort of, like I said, about 1 o'clock in the morning. I don't think I had any lost time or anything like that, or anything weird. I mean, nobody obviously noticed that I was missing because nobody knew what time I got home, really, so.
Have you ever asked, do you ever do any remote viewing where you just kind of ask and just focus on it and ask what it is and see if it responds?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
Maybe I should
try. Want to try that sometime.
I
was going to say, especially nowadays where people are interacting with quote unquote UFOs these days, you see the CE5 and all these other things are going on where they're supposedly engaging on some kind of an exchange of consciousness level with whatever it is, whether it's ours, whatever it is. I would say engage, have the communication, leave an open communication system going, but find out what exactly it is and see if it's willing to provide you with the information you seek. I mean, that's just my own take, but that's what I would do.
And in your etheric work, does the colour purple mean anything? Because
it's transmutational.
Is it?
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story. When I was a young baby, I was probably about 3 years old, and I remember being in my cot at home and standing up. I mean, I've told this story a few times as well. Holding up on the side of my cot and seeing a purple mist come into the room and being terrified, circling around the room. And I was terrified. I mean, I didn't know what ghosts or anything were at the time. And I can remember my father coming in and saying, I mean, I could barely talk probably, but in my baby talk, I was saying, look at that, and he couldn't see anything. But this purple mist swirled around the room and he went back out of the room again. But I did I did speak to my father a few, obviously when I was older, and I said, do you remember that? Because it's always been in my mind. I've always remembered it, and he does remember me screaming, but couldn't see anything.
Wow. Very interesting.
I don't know if would you got any ideas what that might be?
Well, it is, so many things come to mind because the violet flame of transmutation is always about transmutation through, just transmutation of energy. So that's very symbolic. First of all, the crown chakra, and also your abilities as a healer. The first thing comes to mind is that there's something about you that's unique, that you have abilities that you probably don't even know about, which connect to healing work. So that would connect in on that level.
That's a strange you say that, because I've been told that before. That I've got some sort of healing thing. Yeah. I mean, I've never done it, but
well, you need to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to push you into it, but I would just say just do it. and just set the energy in motion, you'll find that you'll have those attunements already there anyway. Also, Merlin, I don't know if you have anything with Merlin, but that seems to be very strong with your field as well, Merlin. So that's something to look at. Magic, alchemy, mysticism, all those things correlate with that particular transmutational violet.
Right. I mean, my hands are always very warm. You know, even if I'm outside in the cold, my hands stay very warm.
So you're already running the energy. So you've probably been a healer before you showed up here on the timeline is my take anyway. Oh, right. And that part of that is a reminder to you. The violet flame, in my opinion, is very, very significant. And also, I think of Saint Germain a lot as well, but it's the transmutational flame, which literally transmutes everything, viruses, funguses, bacteria, distortions, trauma. So you have that ability to transmute your environment. And if I were you, I would actually work with that violet flame. If you ever feel like you need it, just use it to transmute, especially if you're doing any type of investigative research.
Yeah, I've probably left it a bit late now, haven't I, really?
No, not at all. Not at all. You have it in you. The thing is, we are always here to uncover who we really are. And who we really are is star people. We have so many abilities. We activate them through states of consciousness, through spirituality, through affirmations, through meditation, or life's journey. And that's the whole idea. It's a progression of spirit of finding out who you really are as a multidimensional being. I would say utilize your skills as guided. Just do it.
Yeah. Oh, well, you've certainly given me a lot to think about tonight, I must say. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I never even thought I'd have a radio program at this, you know, at the beginning of this year, and all of a sudden I was invited onto another radio show, and on the back of that, I was given this show, basically, you know.
Wonderful.
So.
I'm so glad you're doing it. You're fabulous. You do a great job.
Well,
and I'm so glad
I'm doing my best. I mean, I started off pretty ropey, I think, but I think I'm getting a little bit better.
But, you're great. I'm going to have you on my show.
Oh, well, yeah, that's great. I'll come on anytime. But, yeah, it's been fantastic. What else can I speak to you about? I don't know. You've sort of blown my mind, really.
In a good way, I hope.
Oh, certainly, yeah. So we've covered the UFO disclosure movement. So you see your role in the paranormal. Do you see your role as really a messenger to get things out there?
To some degree, I'm a teacher, so a facilitator and a teacher, an ambassador to some degree when it comes down to information. Certainly there is a sounding board for anybody who's into paranormal, supernatural, UFOs, or even covert technology. So I try to put myself out there as someone who they can communicate with or ask questions to. And it's always good to brainstorm. That's the bottom line. That's the whole idea behind working together in groups, is to just talk about information and experiences and compare notes. I have a lot of information I can share, so it helps people along the way.
Do you have some sort of a factor that drives you, or you've got some sort of a mechanism that motivates you, or does it just come natural?
I think initially, after the induction, it was just about telling the truth and making sure that the truth was out there, because I knew that my case got shoved under the carpet. So that was my drive. That was the driving force, was to just keep pushing and pushing and putting the truth out there. And then you saw this truth media come out, where all of a sudden all these different types of, internet media started happening, where we were just out there. I never saw myself doing radio either, and then I'm on radio. So that was another thing I never saw. And I see futures. I mean, I understand my future, and I never saw any of this stuff. So it's interesting how that worked, but I know that I'm in a different space-time configuration than I was in 2004, and I think that's part of it.
Well, yeah. Oh, hang on. God, you've given me so much. My head's so full of stuff. Right.
You'll probably be spinning your wheels late tonight, but that's okay. But you have a lot of UFO sightings over there in the UK, from what I understand. It's a hot spot, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've got to say, I live near Rendlesham Forest, and I have been in the woods late at night, and we have seen lights in the sky moving. I'm not talking about aeroplanes. I'm talking about remember I described stars moving and stopping and moving. Well, a few of us saw the same thing. This was probably a few months ago now, late last year. Of the same thing, like watching a star move and then stop and move and stop and move.
Very interesting.
Obviously, aircraft don't do that. It is quite a witchy area where I live in Suffolk. There's a lot of little old villages here. This is I live in a town near a town called Saxmundham, which was one of the earliest Saxon settlements. I think that's where it got its name from. So there's a lot of witchcraft in the area.
Good witches, I hope.
Well, I presume so. I try not to get involved.
Yeah, it sounds like a very powerful place, a very charged place.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Have you been
it's interesting.
Have you been to the UK yourself?
Yeah, I haven't. I've always wanted to go, but I'd like to go check it out. I'd love to go explore over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating. Really does.
Well, I think
a lot of interesting things.
Well, I think it's sort of fascinating all over the country, but I think Suffolk has actually got I don't know, something special about it as far as witches and the paranormal go, really.
Right.
Obviously, you know about the Rendlesham case, the UFO case, which was quite a big.
And what's interesting, and I don't want to cut you off. I'm sorry about that. But what's interesting is I always think of when there's a sighting, there has to be a certain kind of a portal or a time dilation where there's a portal or something opening up where they're accessing interdimensional space to get here or whatever it is, whether it's from Black Science Department or whatever. But the bottom line is there has to be a signature there where there's an entry point. In other words, the entry point's still there.
Yeah.
So that's what, in my opinion, you could be saying the entry point. I don't think those go away. They activate through frequency.
Yeah, it's strange you say that because I've had a couple of other guests. We've talked about that. And we talk. It's not always extraterrestrial. It can be interdimensional. Quite easily. Because I believe it's all connected myself. And
I definitely believe that.
And Jim Penniston goes down along that he seems to think it could be like time travelers. I mean, he doesn't know the answer, but he's got an assumption it could be time travelers.
Well, it's definitely there. The signatures are there, and that's what I always say. Regardless of us, before we showed up here on the map, there were visitors here, and they were traversing the galactic highway. They were traversing our atmosphere. However, they were coming in and out with the doorways. Those doorways, in my opinion, are still here and activated or deactivated. And I feel like the military and the covert military is actually trying to stop trying to seal those, but I don't think they can because it's a frequency. So to me, I feel like, well, that's why you talk about residual haunts and things, or maybe we haven't discussed that yet, but the idea behind it is constantly having a repetitive thing coming back. So to me, when we're having experiences and we're seeing these things connecting in with different types of UFOs, I feel like that they're traversing a highway and that we need to just map the highway and then we'll find them. It's easy enough to do, in my opinion.
Yeah. Do you think cats and dogs are more sensitive? But they seem to, to like the paranormal.
Definitely. Cats are really powerful. They're very psychic and very protective. I call them temple kitties of ancient Egypt, but literally very powerful insofar as psychic shielding and protection go. They can take a lot too. They're energetically very strong. The dogs are very hypersensitive and more so, in my opinion, to, also covert transmissions. So they're very sensitive with their hearing to regular supernatural events and also technological, and people need to be very aware of this because sometimes the technology that's streaming right now can affect them. It can make them kind of black out, and it can also create seizures and things, so people need to pay attention to their animals. Keep an eye on them.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your second degree black belt? Are you an instructor? Yeah,
I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and so that is my main style. I also have a background in jiu-jitsu, Japanese jiu-jitsu, and weapons, and Tai Chi Qigong, and I've taught Tai Chi Qigong years ago, and it's a very nice system insofar as just regenerating and bringing in universal life force energy. But my background is hardcore Taekwondo. Also, I was women's kickboxing champ, advanced kickboxing champ back in the day in the 90s. So, yeah, I did a lot of good training, a lot of hard training, and I still love it today.
It sounds like a good friend of mine. I don't know if you've heard of Frank Willis. Do you know Frank Willis? Over here?
Familiar, yeah.
He's a friend of mine, and he's a Thai or Chi master, actually. Perhaps you should get him on your show one day.
Yeah, anytime. I'd love to interview more martial artists. It's something I haven't been doing much of, and I'd love to put them out there, so anytime, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a very knowledgeable chap, and he's had quite an amazing life. He's got 2 world records for breaking roof tiles. I'll put him in touch with you, and perhaps you'd like to get him on.
Yeah, love to have him on. Yeah, it's such a beautiful path. Any type of martial arts, whatever people are guided to do, whatever style. Yeah. To me, it's just a lifesaver. It changed my whole life. I love it. Yeah,
it is. He's actually had these tough times as well, because he was a soldier of fortune in Africa, and he's seen a lot of nasty things, like even a firefight with greys apparently, which he doesn't know what the full story was, but apparently there was a lot of ammunition, empty cartridge cases left around, and a few of the other troops, they don't know what happened either, but they know something happened because of all the empty cartridges everywhere. But I'll let him go into that story with you. But I'll put him in touch with you.
Yeah, I'm happy to interview him. And also, like I said, I'd love to have you on my show.
Well, yeah, I mean, give me a shout, chuck a date at me, and I'll I'll definitely come on. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks for the invite. Anyway,
absolutely.
I'm afraid we've got to cut it off there, Solaris. It's been fascinating talking to you, and you've blown my mind, and I think you're going to keep me awake all night tonight.
In a good way, I hope. And if you ever want to go into more details with witchcraft or whatever, I'm happy to come back at any time.
Please
want to go.
Yeah,
you're such a sweetheart, though. I really enjoyed talking to you. You're excellent. You're really good. I can tell. It's a pleasure connecting with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely like to. I'll definitely come on your show, and I'll speak to you again. And so you're my little incidents. I mean, nothing like yours, but.
I'm sure.
It's been fascinating.
I doubt that.
Anyway, I've got to say goodbye to everybody, and thank you for listening, and thank you, Solaris, for a really fascinating show. Bye-bye, everyone. Adios. Bye-bye, Solaris. Thank you.
Bye.
You've been listening to Paranormal Dimensions. I'm David Young, and this is the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Please tune in again next week. Paranormal Dimensions is a regular feature on Mondays on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.